At 70 years old, I stood frozen in front of my own beach house in Malibu, the keys trembling in my hand. From the terrace, my daughter-in-law Jessica shouted words that pierced me deeper than any knife. "There's no space for you here, you old parasite. Leave." I had come early that morning, expecting peace, expecting silence. Instead, I found strangers in my garden, children trampling my flowers, beer cans scattered across the lawn, and my furniture destroyed. In that moment, humiliation burned my cheeks, but something else awoke inside me, a cold, dangerous strength I hadn't felt in decades. They thought I was weak, fragile, disposable. They were wrong. The moment Jessica's cruel words echoed through the air, something inside me broke, and at the same time, something stronger awakened. This house wasn't just walls and a roof. It was the very proof of my life's struggle. After my husband died, I had nothing but a sewing machine, my bare hands, and my will to survive. For 20 years every weekend, I drove down this coastal highway, planting flowers in the garden with my own hands, paying each bill with the money I earned stitching other people's clothes. Every brick, every tile, every tree, I placed it here. This wasn't just a beach house. It was my sanctuary, my pride, my legacy. And yet, there I stood, treated like an intruder in my own home. Jessica laughed, that cruel laugh that made me feel like nothing more than a beggar. Around her, her family smirked and whispered. Her mother mocked me. Her sister rolled her eyes. Even the children looked at me as if I were an unwanted guest. I wanted to scream. I wanted to fight back. But I didn't. Not yet. Because in that moment, as I turned to walk away with slow, steady steps, I knew something they didn't. They thought they had defeated me. They thought I would simply leave, humiliated, broken, and silent. But they were wrong. What Jessica, Robert, and the others didn't know was that I still had strength, resources, and a plan. I would not be erased from my own story. They called me the little old lady who shouldn't cause problems. But I was about to become the storm that would tear their world apart. This was not the end of my story. This was the beginning of their downfall. 20 years earlier, this house had been nothing more than a barren lot near the coast. People laughed at me when I said I would build something here. A widowed seamstress, alone? With what money? But they didn't know my heart. After my husband died, I refused to crumble. I worked day and night, sewing clothes for families wealthier than mine. With every stitch, I saved a little. With every sacrifice, I bought one more brick, one more tile, one more piece of this dream. Robert, my only son, was just 25 when I began. We stood together on this very land, barefoot in the weeds, and I told him, "One day, this will be our sanctuary. A place no one can take from us." He smiled back then, filled with pride in me. Year after year, I shaped this home with my own hands. I planted the roses in the front garden. I chose the porcelain plates one by one, saving for months just to complete the set. I embroidered the apron Jessica now wears, never imagining one day she would use it to humiliate me. Every memory, every sacrifice, is woven into these walls. And that's why, as I watched strangers destroy my garden and invade my home, the pain went deeper than anger. It was betrayal. Not just by Jessica, but by Robert, my son. The boy who once stood by me, now silent in his absence, allowing his wife to erase me from my own life. But in that silence, I began to understand something important. They thought this house was just a property, a luxury, an asset. But to me, it was proof that I had survived. That I had turned widowhood into strength, loneliness into independence, and poverty into stability. And if they believed they could strip that away from me so easily, then they had no idea who I truly was. The next morning, I returned to the house, hoping, perhaps foolishly, that it had all been a misunderstanding. Maybe Robert would appear. Maybe Jessica would soften. Maybe I could still reason with them. But when I arrived, the door to my own house was locked. I had to ring the bell like a stranger. Veronica, Jessica's sister, opened it with an irritated face, as though I were disturbing her sleep. Inside, my sanctuary had been turned upside down. The kitchen I had designed with love was now filthy, dishes piled high, my best pans destroyed. My porcelain plates, collected piece by piece across 20 years, were shattered, dismissed as old and useless. My bedroom, the sacred space where I kept my memories, had been invaded. My clothes stuffed into garbage bags, my pillows stained, strangers sleeping in my bed. But the worst came when I discovered my secret closet. A space no one but me knew existed. Inside, my property deeds, my jewelry, my personal documents had been disturbed. Some items were gone. And among my papers, I found something chilling: new documents, with Robert and Jessica's names on them. An application to transfer ownership of my house. Legal papers declaring me mentally unfit to manage my own property. Attached was a fake medical report diagnosing me with dementia, signed by a doctor I had never even met. I felt the blood drain from my face. My own son had signed his name on papers to steal the house I built brick by brick. Jessica's handwriting scrawled notes about how much money they would make, how they would use it for a bigger apartment, better schools for their children. And then, from the terrace, I heard her voice. Jessica, speaking loudly on the phone, bragging to her mother. "Don't worry, the lawyer says it's easy. Since Robert is the only child, he can claim early inheritance due to her incapacity. The papers are already ready. Once the house is in his name, we can do whatever we want." I froze in the hallway, the words slicing through me like glass. Early inheritance. Fake dementia papers. Fraud. Theft. Betrayal. This was no longer family drama. This was war. And I knew then, I would not go down quietly. I left the house that morning with trembling hands gripping the steering wheel. Not from fear, but from something far more dangerous: determination. I wasn't the weak, helpless little old lady they thought I was. I had survived widowhood. I had raised a son alone. I had built a fortune out of nothing but a sewing machine. And now I would fight. The first step was the bank. Mr. Davis, the manager, had known me for 15 years. When he showed me my accounts, I almost smiled. Over $120,000 saved from decades of discipline. Jessica thought I lived off scraps. She had no idea that every penny I had ever earned, I had saved to protect myself. "Mr. Davis," I said firmly, "freeze my accounts from any third-party attempts. And I need a letter confirming my full mental capacity to manage my finances." His face grew serious. "Eleanor, is your family trying to declare you incompetent?" "Yes," I answered coldly. "And I will not let them succeed." From the parking lot, I called the lawyer Mr. Davis recommended, Thomas Grant, a man known for exposing fraud and defending victims of family exploitation. That very afternoon, I sat in his office, sliding across the table the damning documents I had gathered: fake medical reports, fraudulent transfer papers, photos of the wrecked house, and evidence of stolen jewelry. As Thomas scanned the papers, he looked up at me with a sharp, almost amused expression. "Mrs. Vance, your case is solid. They've committed fraud, theft, document forgery, and age discrimination. If you're ready, we can strike back hard." "Do it," I said without hesitation. "I don't just want my house back. I want the world to see what they did." That night, back at the hotel, I stood before the mirror. My reflection looked different. Gone was the frail, humiliated woman from yesterday. My eyes carried something new: steel, resolve, power. They had underestimated me. Now, they would learn the cost of betrayal. Thomas Grant worked fast. Within days, subpoenas were issued, witnesses lined up, and a case file thick enough to bury Jessica and Robert sat on his desk. But I wasn't satisfied with quiet justice. No, I wanted the world to see what they had done. So I began my own preparations. I contacted the Homeowners Association, presenting evidence of the wild parties Jessica had hosted. Photos of trashed gardens, complaints from neighbors, security camera footage of strangers entering my property. They were shocked. "We thought you approved it," the chairman admitted. "We had no idea you'd been pushed out." I went further. At the local church, where I had been a member for decades, I stood up one Sunday and told my story, not in anger but in calm truth. Gasps filled the pews. Some wept. Others shook their heads in disbelief. One woman whispered, "How could your own son allow this?" The community rallied around me. Offers of help poured in: witnesses, statements, moral support. My humiliation had transformed into fuel, not only for me, but for others who had been silenced in their own families. Meanwhile, Thomas uncovered something even darker. Jessica and Robert hadn't just tried to steal my home. They had siphoned money from my accounts, forged my signature on checks, and even taken out loans under my name. fraud, theft, and identity abuse, all punishable by law. When Thomas laid the evidence in front of me, I didn't flinch. Instead, I smiled faintly. Good, I whispered. Let them dig their own graves. In the hotel that night, I pulled out a suit I hadn't worn in years. Emerald green, bold, commanding. I stood before the mirror, slipping it on piece by piece, like armor before battle. For decades, I had dressed in modest fabrics, fading into the background. But now I would shine. Jessica thought she had silenced me. Robert thought he had buried me. But the truth was simple. I had only just begun. The ballroom was filled with glittering lights and elegant dresses. It was the charity gala Jessica had bragged about for weeks, the perfect stage for her vanity. But tonight, it would become the stage for her downfall. I arrived in my emerald suit, my heels clicking against the marble floor. The chatter quieted as I walked past tables, eyes turning, whispers rising. Some recognized me, some did not. But all would remember what came next. On stage, Jessica stood with a glass of champagne, basking in attention. Robert lingered at her side, uneasily adjusting his tie. Their smiles froze the moment Thomas Grant stepped forward, flanked by two officials. "Ladies and gentlemen," Thomas announced, his voice carrying across the hall, "we interrupt this evening with a matter of justice. Documents have surfaced, proof of fraud, theft, and elder exploitation." Gasps filled the room. Phones rose into the air, recording every second. Then it was my turn. I stepped onto the stage, my hands steady, my voice sharper than it had been in years. This house you all know, the Malibu estate Jessica flaunts on her social media, was built by me, brick by brick. My son and his wife tried to erase me from it. They forged documents, they called me senile, they threw me out onto the street. I held up the evidence folder. The crowd leaned forward. But here is the truth. Every signature is forged. Every lie is exposed. And now, the law will do what family failed to do, protect me. The ballroom erupted. Some gasped in horror, others cheered. Phones flashed, voices shouted. Jessica's face drained of color, Robert's shoulders slumped in shame. I looked directly at them, my voice cutting through the chaos. "You tried to bury me. But you forgot, I was the one who planted the seeds." For the first time in months, I felt whole again. Strong. Untouchable. The fallout was swift. By the next morning, every newspaper in Malibu carried the same headline: "Elder woman exposes family fraud at gala." Clips of my speech spread across social media, viewed millions of times. Strangers from across the country sent me letters, some of outrage at my son and Jessica, many of solidarity, telling me their own stories of betrayal. Jessica's sponsors dropped her overnight. Her Instagram empire crumbled. Robert was suspended from his firm pending investigation. Neighbors refused to speak to them, ashamed of the scandal they had brought upon the community. As for me, I walked through the front gates of my Malibu home once again, not as a guest, not as a burden, but as the rightful owner. The court had frozen the property in my name, and Thomas assured me it was only the beginning. Fraud charges were filed. Civil suits stacked against them. Standing in my garden, I could hear the ocean waves crashing, just like the day I first moved in decades ago. The same wind carried through the palm trees, but this time it didn't sting of loss. It smelled like freedom. But victory wasn't just about reclaiming bricks and mortar. It was about reclaiming myself. I donated part of my savings to establish a local foundation, one dedicated to protecting seniors from abuse, fraud, and manipulation. I wanted others to know, silence is not the answer. Neighbors who once pitied me now greeted me with respect. At the grocery store, strangers smiled and whispered, "That's her. That's the woman who stood up." And for the first time in many years, when I looked in the mirror, I saw not a victim, but a survivor. When you grow old, people assume your story is finished. They assume you are weak, that your voice no longer matters. But I've learned something powerful. Age does not make you invisible. Silence does. Jessica and Robert tried to erase me, to strip me of my dignity and my home. But in the end, their betrayal only revealed my strength. If you are listening to this, and you've been told you are too old, too weak, or a burden, remember this: you are not. You have the right to be heard. You have the right to fight back. Because family is not defined by blood alone. Family is defined by respect, by love, by the way they protect you when you're most vulnerable. And if they fail you, you must never fail yourself. I close my journal each night with one reminder. They underestimated me once. But never again. And if my story has touched you, I ask only this. Share it. Because maybe, just maybe, it will reach someone sitting silently in their own house, wondering if they, too, have the strength to stand. You do. You always do.